My daughter-in-law informed the grocery store clerk, "That old woman is the maid. Stop talking to her." My son and grandson started laughing. They had no notion I owned the store. I can lead the inheritance that day. I appreciate your presence. To check how far my narrative has gone, remark the city you're viewing from and finish my story. I should have suspected something was awry when Sloane insisted on grocery shopping with us. My daughter-in-law seldom did anything for herself. Yet there she was at 10 a.m. completely made up, blonde hair in a bun, fancy pocketbook in manicured hands. "Please, Grandma Edna," my grandson Levi yelled from Grant's SUV backseat. "We're going to grab ice cream after shopping." I still got a thrill when Levi included me in their plans at 70. This is unusual today. I slid into the rear seat next to him, my arthritis slowing me down. Sloane looked at me visibly annoyed. "Be careful not to disgrace us in there," she whispered. Just loud enough for me to hear, but not for my son Grant to hear from the driver's seat. I remained silent. Years of experience taught me that Sloane's small jabs made matters worse. Grant would always side with her, making me feel smaller. The grocery shop was bustling Tuesday morning. Families with little children, elderly couples walking gently, and busy professionals grabbing lunch. I shopped at Morrison's for 30 years before Sloane met my son. My comfort came from familiar aisles and pleasant faces. Sloane led us through the store like a military commander. Heaven helped everyone who departed from her list. Levi stayed close to his mother, occasionally looking at me with what I believed was affection but may have been politeness. At checkout, I felt that old tightening in my chest. The young man behind the register, presumably in his early 20s, scanned our things with friendly eyes and a grin. He smiled pleasantly at me. "Good morning, ma'am. How are you today?" Sloane intervened with a stern voice before I could speak. "This ancient woman is maid. Stop talking to her." The words shook me physically. Heat rushed to my cheeks as my breath held in my throat. Young cashier's face dropped. Bewilderment replaced his friendliness. He glanced at me from Sloane, evidently uncomfortable with what he'd seen. What followed Sloane's statements was terrible. Grant, my son, whom I nurtured and sacrificed for, laughed. Not simply a chuckle or uneasy giggle. It was raucous laughing, as if Sloane's words were the week's funniest. Levi 12 joined the humiliating chorus. "Yes, Grandma's our servant," he answered between laughter, parroting what he heard at home. I stood paralyzed, my knuckles white from holding my old handbag handle. The cashier's astonishment turned to sympathy, making everything worse. He stopped looking at me and directed all his comments on Sloane, treating me like an invisible person. "Paper or plastic?" He questioned Sloane, his voice colder than before. "Plastic," she said smugly, pleased with the contact. Other line-goers were gazing. Some were uncomfortable, while others laughed at the family turmoil. I wanted to dissolve into the floor and never see anyone again. Public humiliation wasn't the worst. I realized my family saw me this way, not as a mother, grandma, or even a respectable person. I assisted. I was manipulated and ridiculed for fun. Sloane hooked her arm around Blaze, enthusiastically discussing supper arrangements as we headed to the car. Levi raced ahead, already forgetting what occurred, and I followed like the servant they'd depicted me as, carrying their groceries and my guilt. It was hell driving home. I sat silently in the back car, still absorbing what occurred, while they talked their weekend plans, Sloane's spa day and Grant's golf excursion. No one mentioned our promised ice cream. Not one inquired whether I was all right. I brought the goods into the kitchen when we got home while they did their thing. Being numb with shock and pain, I mechanically put everything away. It was my life. I become this. Something changed inside me as I stood alone in that kitchen. I doubted my life for the first time in years. My modest bedroom had a heavier stillness. That night, I sat on my bed in the same clothes from our unsuccessful shopping expedition, too tired to change. My memory of Morrison's market replayed like a broken record. This ancient woman is maid. Sloane's comments wounded harder each time I remembered them. I was tormented by more than her harshness. Grant laughed. My kid, whom I'd carried in my arms and worked 3 jobs to maintain when his father left us, laughed at my embarrassment. I surveyed my bedroom for the first time in months. It was the tiniest room in the home, barely fitting a twin bed and dresser. After moving here 5 years ago, Sloan advised I take this room for the master suite. It makes more sense, she murmured with a beautiful grin that never reached her eyes. Space is needed for our stuff. Of course, I agreed. Always agreed. That was simpler than fighting. Easier than tough or ungrateful. They let me dwell in their house, right? Sloan always phrased it that way. Despite living here for 15 years before she arrived, the little mirror across the room portrayed a woman I scarcely knew. When did I shrink? When did I start shrinking and apologizing for taking up room at home? I wore the same utilitarian bun for years with my gray hair. My clothing were clean but outdated, selected for longevity above style. Sloan called me the assistant, and I looked like her. I wasn't always thus. I closed my eyes and tried to recall the lady I was before Henry departed. Grant grew up and married, and I learned to be invisible to preserve the peace. I ran a little catering business from this kitchen. Simple home-cooked meals for local families and small parties. It was my skills were superb too. People requested my pot roast and apple pie. Some regulars scheduled me months in advance for dinner parties and family gatherings. Before Sloan deemed my business vulgar and unsuitable for my age. She convinced Grant that having visitors in and out was harmful and I should retire. She kept giving me excuses to turn down new clients, too much kitchen dirt, noise, and interruption to their life. She took my business, freedom, and purpose within a year of moving in. She made me a live-in babysitter and housekeeper for room and board. But tonight, in my little room's darkness, I recalled something else. Something I'd almost forgotten in my regular cycle of cooking, cleaning, and hiding. My closet included outdated jackets and outfits I seldom wore. I had built a tiny safe years before behind them, far back. I entered the combination with trembling hands. Numbers representing Henry's death date. Some could have found that date agonizing, but I saw it as survival. The safe had documents Sloan and Grant didn't know about. Bank statements, investment documents, deeds. After Henry went, I feared financial vulnerability again. Every penny I saved from my catering company, every modest bequest from distant relatives, and every meticulous investment I'd made over the years was neatly documented and silently increasing. I examined the latest claims by lamplight. My meticulous investments grew over decades. I possessed 3 downtown rental buildings, a diverse investment portfolio, and 40% of Morrison's Market, where I was humiliated today. I catered for Bill Morrison, the former owner. In exchange for a partnership, I secretly gave funds when he needed investors to expand. It was legal and documented, but I never told Grant or Sloan. Would I? They would merely get involved, take charge, and decide on my money and business ties. I realized early in Sloan's residency that any show of independence or financial security threatened her authority. After I acknowledged having funds, she started proposing ways I could help them with different bills. She suggested I sell my little rental property to get money for Levi's education fund. I no longer mentioned anything. I made them think I had nothing but their charity. Although it cost me my pride, it maintained tranquility. But now, looking at these documents, I realized I'd lost more than pride. It was my sacrifice. This modest empire of assets and buildings was formed by a strong lady. Smart and clever, she was autonomous. She should have been respected, not dubbed the maid by her family. I gently returned the documents to the safe but didn't close it. Tomorrow I'd call. I would revisit offices I hadn't been in years. I would recall who I was after years of attempting to please them. After changing into my nightgown and getting ready for bed, I saw myself again in the mirror. I saw no victim this time. The lady I saw had been playing a role so long she forgot it was an act. Every show has to finish. I heard voices in the living room 3 days after the grocery store event when I returned from my afternoon stroll. Sloan's chuckle filled the house when the front door jarred. She was partying again, so I had to disappear until her company departed. My name was uttered as I headed to my room. Something about the tone made me pause at the foot of the steps, holding the handrail. I don't know how long I can tolerate her. Sloan's voice had that edge when she felt she was smart. She moves about like a ghost, always underfoot. Can't you house her? This voice was unfamiliar, one of Sloan's new book club acquaintances. Sloan laughed coldly. Believe me, I investigated. But Grant gets emotional when I mention it, adds, We can't abandon his elderly mother. Her voice oozed fake pity. He doesn't realize she's abandoning us by becoming a burden. Weak legs. I hid behind the wall but could hear every word. Sloan added that we're waiting for the inheritance scenario to resolve. Grant suspects she has savings, maybe a minor life insurance. Moving her out before we know what we're dealing with is unwise. Another voice spoke. The Sandra I'd met at family events owned this one. Can it last longer? Really? She's 70? She looks older. The issue is that. Sloan sighs heavily. The girl is healthier than she appears. Who knows, maybe live another 10 years. I'm stuck nannying someone who provides nothing to this home. I gasped at its nonchalant brutality. I knew Sloan didn't like me, but hearing her talk about my death like a business was unexpected. What does she do all day? Sandra asks. With bitter amusement, Sloan remarked, she's busy, cleaning, cooking, and monitoring Levi as needed. Free labor. Maybe having her around has some benefits, but the cons outweigh the rewards right now. I heard footsteps and understood someone was approaching the kitchen. My pulse was racing as I gently climbed the stairs, sure they could hear it. After returning to my room, I sat on my bed attempting to digest what I'd heard. They expected me to die, not enjoy a long, healthy life with loving family. Waiting for me to die so they could inherit my leftovers. My son Grant heard about this talk and presumably had others like it. The man I taught to be kind and sensitive was debating my future like a young stock option. The hardest aspect was how inaccurate they were about everything. My finances, my household contributions, my identity. They regarded me as a burden, a placeholder until nature took over. They had no clue that the old woman they wanted to get rid of could transform their life with a phone call. As usual, I prepared supper when Sloan's friends departed, and the home settled into its rhythm. Grant ate while on his phone. Sloan nibbled at her food while perusing social media, and Levi ate his lunch before going upstairs to play video games. Sloan said, "This chicken is dry," without looking at me. Maybe season less next time. I nodded quietly. Sloan's comment was about dominance, not the chicken, which was moist and seasoned just as I'd made it for decades. She was reminding me of my rank. As I cleaned, they discussed their weekend plans. Wine tasting for Sloan and her pals, fishing for Grant. Levi would remain with me, so I'd spend my weekend entertaining a 12-year-old while they relaxed. Grant abruptly addressed me as Mom, the first time all evening. Sloan and I had discussed painting the home this spring. Please pack up your room so the painters may enter. Not a request. Instruction disguised as information. Naturally, I answered, "Whatever you need." Sloan grinned, happy with my obedience. 1 or 2 days should do it. You can sleep on the basement sofa while they work. Old and unpleasant, the basement couch had a spring in the cushions. Naturally, they knew this. Another minor humiliation, another reminder that my comfort didn't matter. I stared at the clean dishes I'd put away in the kitchen alone after they went to bed. I convinced myself for years that family was worth any sacrifice and that love meant taking whatever was given without complaint. The words I heard today weren't love. Even fundamental humanity was lacking. I contemplated my money, properties, and Morrison's market alliance that embarrassed me. I thought of my hidden independence and financial accounts they didn't know about. Maybe it was time to come out. Maybe it was time to remind everyone, including me, who Edna was behind all this farce. Maybe I should reclaim my authority. I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in years the next morning. As Sloan and Grant slept in and Levi was getting ready for school, I silently left the house and strolled 6 blocks downtown. Morrison's was my first stop. Walking those familiar aisles seemed odd. I felt anything other than shame from my humiliation. It was partly my store. My trust in Bill Morrison's idea years ago helped create these shelves, staff, and business. Bill was crouched over bills in his office behind the customer service counter, looking every bit of his 68 years. He smiled at me with his worn face. "Edna, why are you here early?" I relaxed in the chair across from his desk for the first time in months. I wanted to discuss our collaboration. "Bill, we haven't discussed business lately." He seemed more serious. "Everything okay?" "Your voice differs. I considered taking a more active part in operations," I stated thoughtfully. "Too long I've been inactive." Bill reclined and watched me intently. "What active role do you envision?" I'd want to evaluate our employment policies, especially customer service training, and I think I need an office to manage daily operations. Next, we reviewed financials, operational improvements, and my transformation from silent partner to active business owner for an hour. Bill was pleased with my participation, saying he hoped I'd desire greater responsibility once he retired. There's more, I added as our meeting ended. I may need to update my will and business succession arrangements. Can you recommend an estate planning attorney? Understanding strengthened Bill's sight. I was familiar enough for him to read between the lines. Sarah Mitchell. She handled everything for my family. She's discreet, thorough, and doesn't criticize families. My next destination was Sarah Mitchell's office. A smart 50-year-old attorney listened intently as I described my position. She was silent when I finished. "How long has your family mistreated you?" she finally asked. "I've seen it worsen over the past 5 years when my daughter-in-law moved in. I suppose I've enabled it by not speaking up." Sarah nodded attentively. "Even if they don't know all your assets, the fact that they're making decisions regarding your living circumstances and future care without your involvement seems like financial abuse." She started writing notes on a legal pad. "Your current will. Who gets your benefits?" "Grant, my son, benefits most. I have a lesser bequest for my grandson Levi and charity gifts." "You want to alter this." Inhaled deeply. "I want to eliminate Grant. I want to put up a trust for Levi to access at 25 if he maintains a respectful relationship with me. I wish to donate more significantly." Sarah took notes while I spoke. "Your business interests? I want to preserve control throughout my lifetime, but I'm considering afterlife choices. Maybe employee ownership. Maybe selling my shares to Bill. Maybe something different. I don't want my son and his wife to run enterprises they didn't establish or understand." We discussed possibilities, trust arrangements, and estate overhauls for 2 hours. Sarah said the improvements I wanted would take weeks to finish, but she could start the paperwork immediately. "Just one more thing," I remarked before leaving. "I want everything done discreetly. My family won't know about these modifications until they're finalized. Attorney-client privilege covers all our discussions. But Edna, might I give you some personal advice?" I nodded. "Do not allow their response stop you from protecting yourself. If your beneficiaries mistreat you, you can modify your legacy. You decide how to spend your money." Walking home, I felt lighter than in years. I was acting instead of suffering for the first time since Sloan moved in. I remembered that I had options and didn't have to accept their treatment. Sloan was cooking a smoothie when I got home. She gazed at me, somewhat annoyed. "Where were you?" "I needed you to monitor Levi this morning, but you disappeared." I answered calmly that I had errands. She appeared confused about business. "What sort of business matters?" "Personal matters," I said. Beginning lunch prep, Sloan frowned more. "What personal matters? You have no business." I ignored her questions and chopped veggies. For once, her perplexity didn't disturb me. I thought it nearly humorous. She was sure she knew everything about me. She was sure I was a helpless elderly woman with no alternatives. "Edna," her voice cautioned. "I questioned you." I looked up at her, maybe for the first time in years, and responded. "I had personal issues." I guess my tone stunned her because she moved back, forgetting her smoothie. She responded flusteredly, "Well, next time tell someone where you're going. We worry about your disappearance." That almost made me giggle. The woman who had discussed my death with her friends yesterday afternoon was now worried about me. Then I'll remember it, returning to my vegetables. While making lunch, I thought about Sarah's paperwork, my new Morrison's Market workplace, and all the changes approaching. Sloan and Grant had no idea their comfy lives would change drastically. But I did. I looked forward to tomorrow for the first time in years. The legal documents were ready 2 weeks after my visits to Bill and Sarah. I saw my family's casual brutality and entitled attitudes with a detachment that startled me during those days. Every contemptuous comment, every order disguised as a request, and every time they treated me like hired assistants increased my determination. Morning felt different. Like pre-storm air, it was heavy. As usual, I cooked breakfast, presented it, and watched them eat without thanks. Grant browsed his phone. Sloan talked about her day, while Levi ate hurriedly before catching his school bus. Knocking at the main door at 10, Sloane looked up from her magazine with irritation. Expecting someone? She accused me of being responsible for any home guests. I'll grab it, I answered gently, straightening my apron. Sarah Mitchell stood on the porch in her blue suit and leather briefcase, calm and professional. I didn't recognize the younger man behind her. Good morning, Mrs. Harrison. Here to deliver certain mentioned papers. Sloane quickly followed me, her interest overwhelming her customary contempt for my actions. This is who? She demanded. My attorney, Sarah Mitchell, stepped aside to let them in. I think you have something for me. Sarah nodded and took a hefty packet from her briefcase. You got the needed paperwork executed and filed. Bill Morrison's son James is the business transfer attorney, transferring business. Sloane raised her voice octave. Any business transfer? The envelope from Sarah felt heavy in my palms. Years of preparation, decades of hidden investments, and lifetime underestimate led to this moment. Leading them to the living area, I recommended we sit down. Grant left the kitchen to investigate the strange behavior. He looked confused at the two attorneys, the formal atmosphere, and his mother carrying official paperwork. Mom, what's up? He inquired, sitting on the couch with Sloane. Standing, I held the envelope unopened. I felt you should know about our family's finances. Sloane's pupils contracted. You talking about what? 3 weeks ago, you dubbed me the maid in front of strangers, I remarked gently. When the cashier mistreated me, you laughed. You made me feel like a burden, that my only value was my unpaid labor for years. Mom, Grant began, but I put up my hand. Please complete. Sloane, I overheard you and your pals talking about my death last week, wondering how long you'd have to deal with me and what little inheritance I may leave. Sloane blushed. You listened in my home, I interjected. I was. What I heard made me realize you don't know me. I took the first document from the envelope. Note that I've eliminated you both from my will. If he can treat me decently, Levi will get a trust money at 25. All else goes to charity. The color left Grant's face. Mom, stop being serious. Our family. I clearly said that family doesn't treat each other like you've done me. That's not the most crucial information. Moving on, James Morrison opened his briefcase. Mrs. Harrison, should I disclose? I nodded, feeling strangely relaxed. Start at Morrison's market. James casually stated that Mrs. Harrison controls 40% of Morrison's market. She became a manager yesterday after 15 years as a silent partner. Sloane opened her mouth. That's impossible. She's broke. She controls 3 additional county grocery shops, 4 downtown rental properties, and a profitable property management firm with 12 commercial buildings, James said. Room stillness was deafening. I watched them realize my words as years of preconceptions broke. How much? Grant murmured. Talking about how much? Sarah checked her notes, combining liquid assets, company holdings, and real estate. A conservative estimate is $47 million. Sloane's gut sounded punched. She held the couch arm, her manicured nails burrowing into the fabric. 47 mil? She repeated numbly. You had $47 million throughout. Correction. I had the foundation. You treated me like hired assistants while I created it piece by piece, investment by investment. You spoke about putting me in the cheapest nursing facility while you waited for me to die so you could receive my nest fund. Grant abruptly up and paced to the window. Why didn't you say? You let us think. Why? Think about. Asking harshly. You were helping me by letting me dwell in this house? That I should appreciate your occasional politeness and attention? Sloane pleaded. We would have handled you differently if we'd known. Correct, I said. My money would have influenced your treatment of me, not my humanity. That reveals everything about your character. Sarah cleared her throat professionally. One more thing. Mrs. Harrison bought this house from you, Mr. Harrison. Your mortgage went to her firm yesterday. You have 30 days to find housing. The destruction on their faces was complete. Grant slumped, head in hands. Sloane looked at me with shock, as if I'd come across as a stranger. Don't do this, she murmured. This is Levi's and our house. This was my first home, I remarked gently. I've been here 22 years, 5 years here. You've shown me that my presence is undesirable in those 5 years. I returned the documents to their package. These attorneys will handle all the details, feeling lighter each second. A downtown hotel will be my home until I make other plans. Grant yelled after me, breaking as I walked up the stairs to pack. Mom, please. We can resolve this. Change is possible. I stopped at the foot of the steps without turning. Grant, I'm 70. Time is running out for you to learn to love me. 6 months later, I watched the early sun paint the Italian Alps gold and rose from my villa balcony facing Lake Co. Elena, my housekeeper, made the perfect espresso in my fine porcelain cup and treated me with the respect I'd nearly forgotten. Transition wasn't immediate. I slept in a downtown hotel for 3 weeks while Sarah and her colleagues audited my assets after leaving Grant and Sloan's. Even I was shocked by the $50 million total. 50 years of cautious investing, quiet operation, and compound growth yielded riches I never calculated. I misleveraged my achievement. I sold many homes, consolidated my wealth, and planned for overseas life with Sarah's guidance. My workers bought the grocery businesses through a generous buyout. The management organization was instructed to keep rentals low for working families. Keeping only what I required for a pleasant existence, I avoided the folks who made me feel tiny. Italy was easy to pick. I always wanted to travel, but practicality took first. Finally, with unlimited time and wealth, I could live the life I'd delayed for decades. The villa was gorgeous and wonderful. 3 bedrooms had French doors to gardens that sloped toward the lake, a library with literature I could read, a kitchen where I prepared for fun, not obligation. Elena tapped quietly on the patio door with her cordless phone. Young Levi from America calls Sonora Edna. My grandson contacted weekly after I left. Anger and confusion turned into thoughtfulness. Our chats moved from accusations to curiosity to understanding. Grandma? His voice deepened with adolescence. How are you? I'm great, honey. How's home life? A pause. Different. Parents are divorcing. Mom left last month. Not surprised. Their marriage was unsustainable without the dream of a large fortune. Sloan undoubtedly found another victim to manipulate. Are you okay? My request was kind. I guess so. Dad keeps inquiring about you. He wants to call. What do you think? Another lengthier pause. He may be realizing he made a big mistake, but I suspect he's only regretful because he found out about your money. The wisdom in his comments astonished me. Levi had emotional intelligence at 13 that his parents never had. What about you? I requested. You regretful about the money or how we treated each other? I apologized for laughing at you at the store, he whispered. Despite knowing it was bad, I did it to make Mom and Dad laugh. It was dumb. Emotion clenched my throat. Thanks for saying so. It matters more to me than you think. Grandma, may I visit you? I miss you, not for money. I grinned when a little boat broke the morning quiet on the lovely lake. I'd love it, but only if you're old enough to go alone and for the appropriate reasons. I do. I wish to view your current residence. Dad showed me photos online. Looks great. After we hung up, I pondered silently. Levi was the one positive from my time with Grant and Sloan. Young enough to study, grow, and outperform his parents. Maybe at least one relationship may be saved from the debris. Grant called many times, but I ignored him. His Levi messages were variants on a theme. The man apologized. He changed. His goal was to fix things. But I'd heard such promises before, typically when he wanted something. The need was greater this time. Elena returned with fresh fruit and the morning mail on a silver tray. One letter had recognizable handwriting. Sloane's looping script was clear. I almost tossed it away unopened, but curiosity prevailed. For 3 pages, threats and appeals alternated. She wanted financial assistance with divorce legal bills. She threatened to bar me from Levi. She vowed to change if I changed my mind. She said I destroyed their family for revenge. I moved the letter to my living room stone fireplace after folding it gently. Fire swiftly burned it, leaving just ash and smoke. Some bridges shouldn't be rebuilt. I practiced my Italian language with my buddies at the local market that afternoon. Sonora Martinez, who sells the prettiest flowers, insisted on giving me extra roses for my dining room table. Jeppa the baker kept the nicest bread for my weekly visits. These folks knew nothing about my money or history. They appreciated my company, and I did too. Family should be warm, accepting, and free of hidden intentions or resentments. That evening, I contacted my New York financial advisor to discuss my newest philanthropic donations: a foundation for elderly persons facing familial neglect, scholarships for single moms beginning their own enterprises, and a fund to help people flee toxic family circumstances. Money was now being utilized for something worthwhile, reflecting my principles rather than aiding those who'd never valued me. As the sun sank over Lake Co, painting the sky in gorgeous oranges and purples, I raised my glass of wine in a modest toast to second chances, late flowering independence, and the courageous act of choosing oneself when no one else will. I was 70 and starting my true life. Formerly the grocery store maid, she now lived like a queen. What's wonderful is that this is just the start of my story. Now I'm wondering about you who heard my narrative. If you were me, what would you do? Have you experienced something similar? Comment below. I'll leave 2 more channel favorites on the last screen, which will surprise you. For watching thus far.